Bryan Kohberger was due in court today, and I'm exhausted. There were at least 15, maybe more motions covered in court today, and Judge Hippler looked like this most of the time. First motion covered using sociopath, psychopath, and murder. The state says they don't plan to use sociopath and psychopath, therefore not necessary to make an order on it. Obviously, when discussing the charges, you have to use the word murder. Otherwise, the judge was like, you guys are counseled, licensed by the bar. Your obligation is to follow rules, and that's what I expect from you. Second motion was state's motion of improper death penalty comments. Example would be the state is trying to kill Mr. Kohberger. Both sides said that they will comport with appropriate language and not be argumentative. Third motion was regarding the 404B evidence motion. Regarding the Amazon purchases, the judge was like, this is not a bad act. It does not preclude intent to commit a bad act. Then regarding the traffic stop video from August 21st, where he got pulled over for speeding and not wearing a seatbelt. The state wants to use this because it helps identify him when he identifies himself on camera. He gives his address, his phone number. It shows what type of car he drives. Defense doesn't want this video used because apparently Bryan Kohberger was giving the officer a hard time, arguing that seatbelts don't provide safety and didn't want to give the officer his phone number. The judge was like, look, it may be prejudicial in the fact that it doesn't help your case, but it is relevant. You don't get to tell the state how to try their case. The judge says he will look at the video and the interaction with the officer and may have to redact that part, but leave the parts where he identifies himself, gives his address, phone number, type of car. The next motion was regarding who can be in the courtroom, and Bryan Kohberger's family apparently supports him, loves him, and would be at every hearing if they could afford to fly out each time. And they have no desire to help the state and testify against him. The state did confirm that they do plan to call certain family members to testify. The defense said, of course, they will need to be subpoenaed and they will have to pay for their travel. The next motion was using conditions as an aggravator, specifically his autism. The defense says they don't want the state using his characteristics as aggravators. The state says they don't plan to, but if they get to the penalty phase, we have a lot better than his level 1 autism spectrum disorder aggravators to use as evidence. The judge says he is not inclined to issue a broad order and that they can deal with this on a case-by-case basis. The next motion was the tip regarding the IGG and instructions for jury. The state and the defense said that they can both come to an agreement on how to handle this. The next motion was regarding alternative perpetrator. The state is seeking an order where they need to meet a threshold of connection, basically provide proof. Defense plans to provide evidence, still in the process of doing investigating. Ma'am, it's been 2 years. What do you mean you're still investigating? The judge, of course, said if the defense plans to present alternative perpetrator, they need to provide evidence. He'll give a deadline around pretrial because we're not going to wait until trial to just bring this up. The next motion was regarding DNA, inconclusive, and touch. Regarding the inconclusive DNA, the state says that they don't plan to imply that it belonged to Bryan, but just that it was inconclusive. The defense wants to exclude the phrase touch DNA. The judge chimed in and said, didn't your own expert use the phrase? The judge said that they are underestimating the intelligence of the jurors and that he will not be precluding the phrase. The next motion was regarding the make and model of the car, also known as Suspect Vehicle 1. Anne argued that in the videos, they described the car as Suspect Vehicle 1, but that there's only actually one video where Detective Immel was able to actually ID the vehicle. The judge was basically like, I'm not going to restrict the use of the term Suspect Vehicle 1. The next motion is regarding the statement of bushy eyebrows. Of course, the defense brought up that Dylan was intoxicated, that her statement should not be relied upon. The state pointed out that Dylan is the only eyewitness and the only part that she could see was the eyebrows. The judge said he'll take it under advisement, rule on it later. He then went into the 911 call and how the defense wants the 911 call excluded as well. arguing about certain statements that were made in the 911 call, and the judge was just like, we're not going to exclude the 911 call. We can deal with it on a statement-by-statement approach. The next motion was on the demonstrative exhibit, or as Anne called it, the dollhouse. This is the 3D model of the home, and argued that it was an unfair surprise and that they don't have time to review it ahead of time. The judge says he will allow it for parts of testimony. The next motion is regarding alibi. The defense has yet to provide a compliant alibi response. The state points out that there is nothing or no one that can place him anywhere during the murders. And Anne starts to say that this is his right to remain silent. And the judge is like, yeah, but who can testify to him stargazing? The next motion was on the AT&T timing advance report for the 100th time. Let's get this part real clear. It was outside of the 7-day window of request. Therefore, that's why it was not included. Cy-Ray ignored the 7-day issue. The defense is trying to act like the state is trying to hide something when they aren't. The judge said you are making serious accusations with no actual evidence. The judge said, I don't want theatrics and accusations like that, and it can get people disbarred. Not going to allow testimony or questions about it. It's done. They then go into discovery, disclosure, and deadlines, and the judge brought up how Anne has an expert that's going to talk about how the murders had to have been done by 2 people using 2 weapons. But remember, they have to prove it. You can't just bring an expert that's going to say blah, blah, blah without proof. They then go into how the defense wants to exclude the Amazon click activity. That explanation was exhausting. I'm not going to go into it, but basically the judge said no grounds for exclusion. The next motion was regarding his neuropsych evidence, and this is addressing his behavior, his demeanor, his detachedness. Defense says that over the last 2 years, the media has portrayed him as evil, dark, creepy eyes, soulless, and incel. And the judge is like, none of that has to do with autism spectrum disorder. He says he'll take it under advisement, rule on it later. They then go into the motion of striking the death penalty and regarding discovery. And Anne says she still hasn't reviewed all the discovery. And the judge is like, why am I just now hearing about this? He's like, it's been 2.5 years. And why did you take on another death penalty case if you're not even ready for this case? I'm over here like, she got time to argue about somebody wearing a t-shirt in court, but you don't have time to review the discovery. Then she says that there's a tip regarding an alternative suspect and that she has to review that. The state's like, there's no Brady material in any of the discovery. And that was pretty much it, and I think that was enough. I know I've had enough.